Welcome to The Kingstonian, a podcast that profiles individuals who are passionate about what they do for a living, about what organization they belong to, or simply passionate about the community they are a part of. Hello there, and welcome. My name is Dave Cunningham. In this episode, we pay tribute to one of our own, a young Kingstonian who got his start calling Golden Gale football here on CFRC back in the 70s, became one of the first 6 journalists hired by TSN, and spent 20 years hosting a provincial radio news program in Alberta. His name was Peter Watts, and he passed away in January after a brief illness. We reminisce with his brother Paul. Paul, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much.
We're here to talk about your late brother, and before I go any further, sorry for your loss.
Thank you.
Peter is somebody that I knew from my time and his time here at CFRC. Peter Watts is who we're talking about. And Peter Watts was a student at Queen's University around the same time I was, so we knew each other from here, and then we both ended up at CKWS in town doing different things. But my memories of Peter go back to a time when we were students, and we both ended up working in the extrusion department at Alcan when Alcan had plants here. So do you remember those days?
Yeah, very much so. Matter of fact, one of the years that he was there, I was there as well.
Really? Okay.
My recollection of the old paint line was great paycheck, not fussy on the hours, but
and not too much to do most of the time.
Not much to do most of the time. But Peter, he spent at least 3 summers that I know of. One in extrusion, and I think there was one on the paint line, I think, and then one in the office.
Now, Peter, you and Peter and your sister Linda all grew up here.
Yep.
Downtown Redendale.
Yep.
So take us through his education.
Well, he spent his first 8 years at Robert Gordon Sinclair School out in Redendale. And there he really got the gift of the gab. So that was to pay dividends down the road. Mm-hmm. From there, he went to Frontenac High School. Now, when we were talking about this the other day, I'm not sure if it was called Collins Bay High School when he was there the first year. Okay. Because it used to be called Collins Bay and was changed to Frontenac shortly after.
Okay.
And I would have to, when we get out to Calgary next month, I'm going to go and look at his yearbooks to find out if one of those years was Collins Bay Secondary. But anyway, he put in 5 years there. Back then, grade 13 was a...
You had to go to grade 13.
It was one of the years. And he managed football and basketball, worked the student council. So with that, he was mostly an off the court, off the field type of person. You know, he wasn't a strong athlete, but liked athletics enough to get involved. Mm-hmm. And so he managed the football team, both the senior and the junior, managed the guys' basketball teams, and had his hand in the student council. And of course, they set up, all of the rallies for football and basketball, and any banquets that were going on, any dances that were happening. You know, anything that had to do with the school as a whole. He was a piece of that.
So Peter finishes school at Frontenac Secondary, and then does he jump right to Queen's, or there's a step between?
From there, he goes to Queen's and rolls in commerce. That didn't agree with him.
So that would have been 68.
Something like that, yeah.
Because I enrolled in commerce in 68, and it didn't agree with me either.
It's funny.
Yeah.
So then that following year, he decided, well, I've always wanted to get involved in radio or TV or both. And he went to a place in Toronto called Career Academy that was run by, as memory serves me right, it was run by CBC professionals who had people in there teaching them the role of how to be a broadcaster, how to be a journalist, all that sort of thing. And for both radio and for TV. And of course, back then, it's all pretty new. Peter had a picture, which is in his condo in Calgary, of his graduation. And I looked at all of the names. I don't recognize any name that I have heard or seen in the journalist or broadcasting industry. But I would, you'd have to do a little bit more homework. But I didn't recognize any names. But Peter obviously utilized that 6 months and decided that when he came back to Queens and enroll in a history politics course, that this is something he wanted to do on a regular basis.
Now, not only did he get involved in calling the Golden Gale football games from CFRC back then, but he also got involved in managing the teams here too, didn't he not?
Yeah. He was involved with the hockey, with the football, and I believe the basketball as well for a season or two.
So that's something he enjoyed doing, was not only the on-air side, but helping the team move forward.
Yeah, and I mean it's quite it's kind of ironic the way we fall down the line together, because Peter at the end of his career was working for Chorus Entertainment. Well, I'm working for Chorus Entertainment doing color for the Frontenacs. And people that didn't know that, I was talking to Jim Van Horn here in Kingston on the last Saturday at the service, and he wasn't aware of that and thought, my gosh, how different is that? How funny is that you two would walk that kind of a path together? Because usually brothers don't do that. No, and and neither one of us were the true athletes. So I think we both recognized early on that if we wanted to be involved in sports, it would have to be behind the scenes, and that was quite agreeable to both of us. Now, in the interests of trying to get as much in as we can during the next part of the program here, his journey from the university takes him to CKWS in town and to CKLC as well. So for those of you who may have forgotten those call letters, CKLC is the actually it's Bell Media stationed in town. So he was working at both, or he did work at both. Yeah. Different times, obviously. Yeah. So at some particular point, he gets the call or applied. How did he get out to Edmonton, which was his next stop? Yeah. Well, he did the news, weather, and sports at CKWS. That's where he started after he left Queens. And then about a year and a half after he was doing that, he got an opportunity to move over to CKLC Radio and do what they called Kingston Today, which was a show that he wrote and produced, and seemed to be pretty successful. Well, here's where it gets a little hazy. Somewhere along the way, it would have been mid to late 70s, he heard through the grapevine that CBC Sports was coming to Ottawa to interview a gentleman for a spot they had open for CBC in Edmonton. And when Peter heard about it, thought, this sounds pretty interesting. How do I get involved? So he made a few inquiries and got to the person that was going to be coming east. And Peter said, okay, what's it going to take for me to get an interview? And the guy said, basically, bring me a tape, a photo, and a resume. Turns out Peter got hired. And the other guy probably didn't. And the other guy didn't. So that was really, I'm sitting in the right place at the right time, and I had enough moxie to go after it. And he was fortunate enough to get hired. And it's interesting, too, because you think of people who focus on one particular aspect of their broadcasting career, whether it's the DJ behind the mic playing records or CDs or whatever, or a sportscaster who is doing play-by-play. But it sounds like Peter is working the first few years of his career trying to get as varied an experience at different kinds of media to make him more desirable in the minds of future employers. Yeah, no question. He was a pretty good writer. So when he sat down to write a story, he could cut to the chase, write the story, get the point across without writing half a book in order to do it. And you learn pretty quickly. And I think obviously that 6 months at radio TV broadcasting school really set him up for what was going to happen down the road. So when he did an interview, he would be asked a question, he would answer the question. He wouldn't, devote more time to talking about something else.
Yeah.
It was, here's the question, here's my answer.
Right. So he gets out to CBC Edmonton, and they're doing primarily sports out there?
Yeah, he was hired by CBC Sports in Edmonton. At the same time, John Wells joined CBC.
Right.
And John was from a broadcasting background as well, from Winnipeg. So they pretty much started at the same time.
So at some particular point, TSN decides that they are going to establish a sports network. So Peter gets involved right at the very beginning.
Yeah.
He was one of the original...
He was one of the first six broadcasters to come on board. So in 1984, when they started the station, TSN thought, if we're going to do this, we're going to need some experienced people to be front and center.
Right.
So they went all across Canada looking for people, and they had, I think, Mark Brown was one, and Jim Van Horn was one, Peter was one, John Wells. So CBC Sports actually lost Peter and John Wells almost on the same time. And they came east to Toronto, and in 1984, when TSN opened up, there they were.
And he got a lot of varied experience working for TSN.
Unbelievable amount. I mean, just to take a step back to the CBC, talk about being in the right place at the right time. The Oilers were winning 5 Stanley Cups. The Eskimos were winning Grey Cups. It was a great place to be if you were a sports fan in Canada. And so he got lots of exposure there, both on air and in the field. And that helped him big time when he came east to go to TSN. Now,
at some particular point, he decided that he wanted to move to something else, and ended up for a good chunk of his career working in Calgary.
Yeah. He was at the time approached by his bosses who wanted to get him off the air. They were thinking, it's time we go a little bit younger. We need more women. We need more minorities, and rightfully so.
Yeah.
That's something that we're seeing a lot of in a lot of walks of life.
That's right.
And so they thought enough of him to offer him a management position. And he just got thinking about it, and the more he thought about it, the more he said, I don't want to be pushing a pencil in an office all day long. He said, I really and truly want to be involved front and center with the broadcast aspect or the journalist aspect. So there was a young lady in Calgary at the time, Teresa Hergert, and she seemed to want more airtime. So she came east, and Peter went west.
And then he went working for Chorus.
And then he started, he left TSN shortly after he got out to Calgary. I'm not exactly sure of timelines there, but I think he was still doing a little work for them for a year or a year and a half. And then he joined the Stampeders, and he worked for them for a couple of years. While he's doing that, he's emceeing the odd banquet at the University of Calgary. So, when you look back at all the things he's done, he was good at a lot of things. And he was the type of person that could stand up in front of 200 strangers and let's talk.
Right.
And he was very informed. He read all the time. A lot of people today don't understand the concept about if you listen and don't speak, it's amazing at what you can learn. And I think Peter took that to heart, because if there was a time for him to have an opinion and give his opinion, then so be it. But he learned an awful lot from others who he used some of it and didn't use all of it.
Paul, before we started talking, recording this particular program, we talked about it was almost like a double life that Peter led when every Christmas he would come back home to spend some time with you and your sister over the holidays and reacquaint himself with some friends that he had here and there in the eastern part of the country. But you didn't really have a clue as to who he was really way back out west in Calgary and Edmonton.
Yeah, no, when you're involved in the media and you're involved in the level that he was, we knew he walked a different path. Mm-hmm. Where we didn't have any clue as to what was going on until we got out there when he was sick. And we found such an outpouring of condolences and get wells and just people who knew him, respected him, and thought an awful lot of him. And I think it was the numbers that really blew us away. Mm-hmm. When you get a phone call from the mayor, when you get a phone call from Rachel Notley, when there's somebody that's in the background that is very influential. The service in Kingston, prime example. At the end of John Wells' speech, he pulled out a message, an email, and read the email and signed Wayne Gretzky. Mm-hmm. So you look at stuff like that and you think, well, he would meet all these people. There's no question. But how involved was he? Well, it's just, he could pick the phone up and talk to most of these people.
And you know well, with your career in hockey broadcasting here in town, that you will meet a lot of people, and some of them may be celebrities or people that are high profile. And you may remember your conversation, but 9 times out of 10, and not just you or me or anybody else, but it's not very often that they remember you years down the road.
Yeah, for sure.
And it sounds like Peter was one of those guys.
Peter was one of those guys. He could walk into McMahon Stadium or the Stampede, and people would come up to him, shake his hand, and say, "I know you from somewhere, and I'm not just exactly sure." And he would look at him and say, "Jim, how are you? I haven't seen you since the Grey Cup from 5 years ago." And he would name them, and everybody would be so floored that he could actually remember all this stuff.
Before we run out of time, I have to talk to you about the infamous Rolodex. Now, at the Celebration of Life, which I was honored to attend on the 23rd, almost everybody who got up there talking about Peter talked about the Rolodex, and the Rolodex was there. And the names that were being thrown around as to whose name and phone number were in the Rolodex.
Oh, yeah, and I mean, it got to be really comical, and we knew about the Rolodexes, but it was in the back of our minds. It wasn't something that we were thinking about until we got out there, and the gentleman who put the video tribute together, who was his cameraman for 35 plus years, mm-hmm. Don Metz, and one of the young ladies that came to TSN in 1987, Lisa Bose, who was a lifesaver when we arrived in Calgary, set us up with the funeral people and drove us all over creation to get things done, and was the social media butterfly, letting people know how things were going and when things weren't going so well. And so those people, and it was funny because I looked one day at the Rolodex, and I looked at Lisa and I said, "Lisa, you're in Peter's Rolodex. You are a somebody."
Who else was in that Rolodex? Throw out a couple of names.
Oh, there was Scott Moore from TSN, mm-hmm. Ernie Afaganis from CBC, who Peter did Blue Jays games with.
Muhammad Ali's name was in there? That's what somebody said.
Possibly, but I didn't see it.
John Madden.
John Madden was there.
Football coach from the States.
Yeah. There was Brian Burke. Oh, there's a list of them a mile long. I mean, he had 2 Rolodexes, and there's probably 500 names and numbers in there. But the other thing was he kept a handwritten notebook, which he used as his telephone directory. It's probably half an inch thick. it goes back to Frontenac Secondary School days. It's sitting in his condo, which we're going to bring home.
Oh, yeah.
And I looked at some of the names there, and unbelievable. Just unbelievable.
We are going to wrap up the show. There's a GoFundMe page that's been set up.
Yep.
Can you give us the details on how to contact that page? What's it under?
Yeah. The best way to do it would be to go to McGinnis and Holloway Funeral Home, and then go over to the search bar and type in Peter Watts. His picture will come up at the bottom of that obituary. There's a GoFundMe address. Click on that, and you can add to the total. It's already there. And I can't say enough about Don Metz and Lisa Bose, who have got this set up. So basically...
what's the money for?
Once a year, we're going to look after the books and the money for one new journalist, broadcast journalist, to go to college.
Okay, so that's what the money's going for.
Yeah.
To finance the year's education for journalists.
Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah. Excellent. We have run out of time on the program, and I appreciate you coming in and talking to us about your brother, who's one of those few people who have left CFRC and done us proud in his career. All the best to you, and thanks again.
Thank you very much. It was most rewarding.
Theme music for the program is Stasis Oasis, a tune written and performed by Kingston musician Tim Aylesworth. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions about any of our episodes, please send a note to the Kingstonian Podcast Facebook page. This is Dave Cunningham from Kingston, Ontario. Thank you for listening. Until next time.